force and vector. So we have terms here like scalar and vectors. Scalar, the definition of a scalar quantity is any position or negative physical quantity that can be completely specified by its magnitude. Example of scalar quantities include length, mass, and time. So those are scalar quantities. No direction, only magnitude. Vector, so na kay sense, there is a sense or there is a direction for vector. Kay ang length o mass and time, magnitude raman siya. For vector, it is any physical quantity that requires both a magnitude and direction for its complete description. Example of vectors encountered in statics are force, position, and moments. Okay? So, position, pasabot, you have your x and y coordinate. You have your values for x and y coordinate in your Cartesian plane. And magnitude, or the resultant, and the sense, and direction, or theta. So, that is the definition and difference between scalar and vector. Vector operation. So, you can do multiplication and division of a vector by scalar. So if a vector is multiplied by a positive scalar, its magnitude is increased by that amount. So if this is your vector, vector A, then you multiply it by 2, but a positive scalar. 2 is a positive scalar. Then you have 2A, but the same direction, the same orientation, and the same sense. Diba? Same ang ilang arrows sa direction. And also, if you have negative A, this is the vector, multiplied it by positive scalar, 0.5, then you'll get this one, 0.5, negative 0.5 A. The same sense, the same direction, but different in magnitude. Kaya gi-multiply man nimo siya positive vector nga 0.5. And you have your negative A nga, positive scalar nga 0.5, and you have your negative A na vector. Okay? This one. This kato previously is the multiplication and division of vector. Today, this slide is about addition and subtraction of vectors. So you have your A here first. Sa class ha. Mas okay siguro og okay. This one para mas klaro. You have your A, vector A, going aning a direction, and you have your vector B going in this direction. When you add two vectors, all you have to do is that you can, actually you can combine. First is, pwede mo siya i-combine, kani, same direction, and you get the resultant R. And R is the, R is a vector, a resultant vector of A plus B, o vector A plus vector B. And make sure nga kanang, para makita lang ninyo, nga kaning vector, kanang naka-bold gani siya, pasabutan na vector quantity na siya, kani. And kaning P dire is the point, para parallelogram law ilang gigamit. So, pwede ni siya ginani. And also, pwede po kag triangle rule. Triangle rule is, muna siya kung naandan. So, you have A, and kung mag-add ka, imo na isumpay ang direction sa B. So, ang B is since paan naman siya, then you have here, this one, and the resultant is from the start sa point A up to the end of point B. And this quantity here, R, is equal to the quantity here nga, R, using parallelogram law. Masabtan? Or pwede po ka, since this is a vector, pwede po ka, you can start with B here. And since it is addition, i-add mo ang kwan sa A, dire. Since A is going there, then A is going down and plus A nga going up, then you can have this figure. So B is going down, then A is going up, then you have your resultant. You need to have a ruler, or before we used kanang graphing paper jud para ma-exact this kanang ma-accurately drawing jud namo ang vector, and you will get the resultant nga the same. Whichever method that you will use, it's the same. The same ang resultant R ani nila. Whether you use parallelogram law or triangle rule. Okay? No question for vector addition? Wala. Let's proceed to subtraction. Subtraction of vector is the resultant of the difference between two vectors A and B of the same type may be expressed as. So this is the resultant of vector subtraction. R prime, okay? So vector A minus vector B is equal to, more ni mo siya, vector A plus the negative of vector B. Okay? Again, if you add two vectors, ano siyang buhaton, vector, resultant R is equals to vector A plus vector B. If you subtract two vectors, the resultant R prime is equals to A, vector A plus the negative of vector B. So the negative, pasabutan na niya ang sense rang imong ginegative na dili ang magnitude, okay? So, if this is your two vectors, vector A and vector B, then the negative of vector B is, if this is going to the right, the negative is going to the left. So, muna na itabo dire. You have your A for the parallelogram law. You have your A here. You have your A. And then, connect it with the negative of B. Instead of going there for your addition, di ba, muna na itabo dire? Yan, arata. Instead of going to the right, since you will subtract it, then use the negative of B. Padulong to the left. So, this is your, then, R prime. Vector subtraction. This is the new R prime. And this R prime is equal if you use triangle construction. So, if you have your vector A, and what is the negative of B? Going there, di ba? Yung negative naman siya. Imurang i-connect. Don't confuse yourself. Ang sa parallelogram, imurang i-connect ang ilang both ends. Ang ilang start di ay. So, muna siyang nahitawag, i-connect mo. If this is vector A, then connect with vector B nga padulong dito. If sa triangle, you have your vector A and connect sa vector B. So, muna ang nahitabo sa imong triangle construction. Of course, R prime in triangle construction or triangle law rule is the same with the R prime in parallelogram law. Okay? So, for addition of collinear vectors, sayon na kayo siya. Imo ra siyang isumpay. Addition of collinear vectors, vector A plus vector B, you have the R resultant R. Kani gabong collinear vectors, nagapon siya sense, nagapon siya direction, and yung sense is going to the right. So, vector gapon siya. Okay. Those are kanang simple presentation of vectors. Now let's go to the reality. These vector forces exist in nature. Masig asa nimo na siya makita sa anana siya sa imong tripod, sa imong camera, nana siya sa kanang tiil sa imong lamisa, sa imong gilingkuran, nanay mga force vectors ana, di ba? So, in this example, you have a chain. So that is the F1 and F2. So in reality mo na siya naong niya para makita niyo. So naa na siya FR. Resultant vector kani siya is equal ni siya dinhi di ba? Equal ni siya dire. So that is the isa sa mga reason nga no nag-study mo aning mechanics, general mechanics, engineering mechanics, for you to understand the forces around you. Para makadesign ka kung you will be a mechanical and civil, unsa pa nang makita nimo ang mga forces in nature. So, i-design nimo ni siya dire nga strong enough so that makarry niya ang load dinhi. And also, kani po dire, nga equal ni siya sa mga forces nga naa dire. So this FR, mo din ni siya actually ang FR kani, di ba? Same direction but going up. Equal but opposite direction. So if you will ask to analyze the particle point, kung saan nga point, ito ibutang point A dinhi mo ni ang point A. Kung mo ni ang point A, then point A is at rest, pasabot. All the forces acting on A are summation of all forces must be 0. So in this case, FR is equals to F1 plus F2. Diba? Na-imagine na ninyo kung sa itong mga resultant and force vector A and vector B earlier. So mas makita na ninyo karon nga mo din na siya nahitabo. Another one. You have the video here. For a while. Sorry for the intermission. Are you still there, class?
Yes, ma'am.
Apa, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, kaya basi nagyaw-yaw ko dito so na day mo. So if you have any questions, yes, Jane, you have any question, malipay kayo ko. Jane, you have any question?
Wala man, ma'am. Nag-raise kog hand ba nga naapa ko.
Okay. Sige. Walay pangutana ha, magpadayon ko ha. Asa naman to? We will close this one. Okay, some of you are not able to attend this because wala na load. Ayan, I understand. That is why we are recording this discussion for you to access it later kung ano may load or available ng internet sa inyo ha. Okay, let's proceed. Force vectors gapon ta. Finding the components of a force. So, okay. Sometimes it is necessary to resolve a force into two components in order to study its pulling or pushing effects into specific components. So, di ba, if you have this force here, kaning force, mas maayo ka to siya i-resolve into V component and U component, di ba? So, imaginary rin siya nga kanang plane. Kung in reality, if you have this force here, kung nakay force nga kani, guys, Kung nakaani siya nga force, and you are assigned to solve the force nga exist dinhi. Pero ang imong nahibalan is ang kanira diri nga force, kanirang tension or compression dining dapita. So what do you do? Pasabot, since it is in equilibrium, di ba? In equilibrium kani nga portion dinhi, in equilibrium ni siya. Pasabot, this force here must be equal to kani o gani. So the component forces Fu, F sub U, and F sub V is equal to your F, to your force F. So same man ni siya dire. Kani siya nga force F can be resolved or can be broken down into two components. So you have your FV here and FU. So na kay FV. So if you do the parallelogram law, mo ni siyang mahitabo, di ba? Na kay F nga resultant. And if you do the rectangular rule, then if you have U, FV here, or FU here, so nag-start siya sa FU, and then you can have your FV. So this is what happens. FU and FV, and you have your F, resultant F. So yun ra no? Basic ra kayo siya, and kabalo ko nga sa yun ra kani para sa inyo ha. Next. So the same ra gyapon ni siya. Addition of several forces. So this is the mo ni siya ang pinaka resultant. But you have your F1, F2, and F3. So FR can be F1 plus F2, which is this one, F1, this one, and F2, kani. Or kung parallelogram, F1 plus F2, then you can have this F1 and 2. Then you can add, if you have this one, and you have F1 and 2 plus F3, then by parallelogram law, this is equal to FR. Am I making any sense? Nakagets mo class, or did nasabdan siya? I'm just showing kung unsaon pagkuha or pagkuhan sa several. If you have 3 or more forces, then how to get the resultant of those forces. Mas mayo jud makita ninyo nga nag-solve nga akong gi-drawing, no? Dili ka nang kuan, di siya effective, no? Class? We will stop our discussion by 10 since first meeting pa man pud nato ni siya. Then I will find a way on how to make our discussion more interactive and more livelier. Okay? So, let's proceed. For the analysis, using parallelogram law, these are the steps that you need to do. There are two components, F1 and F2, and add according to the parallelogram law. So you have to combine F1 and F2, and then you will get the resultant. If the force F is resolved into components along the two axes, then start at the head of the force F. This is the head and this is the tail. Muna yung ilang kuan. Kaya dili maka mag-start padulong sa ana or dili ka padulong. So, add according to the parallelogram law, yielding a resultant force Fr, this one, that forms the diagonal of the parallelogram. So, this is the diagonal of the parallelogram, and this is equal to your resultant Fr. If the force is to resolve into its component, if you are given Fr, along the two axes, or if you are given F and you have to resolve it along V and along U, then start at the head of the force F. You have to start by this one here, mo ni ang head, and construct lines parallel to the axis, thereby forming parallelogram. So along the v-axis and along the u-axis, you have to construct a line so that you will make a parallelogram. So magparallelogram ka po ka dire. And your F is the diagonal nga nasa inside the parallelogram. Okay? And this F here is the FR, or the resultant. Label all the known and unknown force, magnitude, and the angles on the sketch and identify the two unknowns as the magnitude and direction of FR, or the magnitudes of its components. So you have your FR, or you have your component FV and FU. Okay? Next, you have trigonometry. And I know that you're familiar with this one, the sine and cosine law. So redraw half of the portion of the parallelogram and illustrate a triangular head-to-tail addition of the components. Head to tail, if you have vector A and vector B, and you have to add, this is the resultant C. Because half from man siya, half from siya sa parallelogram. It's because you have a parallelogram, inani man siya kung na parallelogram, di ba? So from this triangle, the magnitude of the resultant force can be determined using the law of cosines, and its direction is determined from the law of sines. So cosine law, C is equals to the square root of A squared plus B squared minus 2AB cosine of C. Sine law, familiar jud kay ta kani. A over sine A is equals to B over sine B is equal to C over sine C. Diba? C, length ni siya sa diniha. Muni ang magnitude sa imong vector. But if you will use this one, then muni siya ang length from here to here sa A, length sa B, and length sa C, or magnitude sa vector. And your A, small a, is the direction, the angle, sine B, here, and sine C. No, familiar na kay tano, and I know more na kung sirang plaka gabalik-balik ani, but this is just a kanang kay na-introduce na maguding mas concept sa inyo kaning sine and cosine law. But absolutely, this first vector, it's your first time hearing this one, right? First ninyo ni nga ES subject na nagkuanog statics, di ba? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So this one, you have the two forces, F1 and F2. You have magnitude of F1 is 100, F2 is 150, and you have the direction, the angle. Okay? So the question is, determine the magnitude and direction of the resultant force. So, pinaka-convenient ninyo gamiton, buhaton. So, get your paper, get your notebook, your calculator, your pen, and solve this one. Okay na? Nag-solve na mo, class? Nag-solve mo, wala. So, to get the FR, ano sa'yo mong kinahanglan? Class. You can use the cosine law, and your cosine law is this one. But first, you need to construct this triangle here. So kani siya imutang dinhi in the direction, unsa direction ani niya, unsa ning angle. If you have 115 here, then you have may angle ani niya. 15, if this is 15, then this is 10. So this is 90 minus 25, 65. So if this is 65, this is 65 also. So therefore, this is 115 since it is a parallelogram. This is 115 and this is unknown. This is theta. So FR, nakabuhat na ba tang triangle? This is your triangle. Okay? So mo ni siya katong gikan dinhi. Kani 15 then kani. So ang atong unknown is ang kani. Unknown ang kaning theta pa. So you have your theta is in the direction of your kani theta. Theta is the direction of your FR, your resultant. So cosine law. Cosine law is equal to the square root of a squared. A squared is kani, di ba? Square root of a squared. So 100 squared plus b squared. Kani minus 2a 2 times 100 times 150 cosine of cosine c. So this is the c. Di ba? Muna siya ang gikan din eh. Kani. Opposite sa imuhang c. And your c is your FR. So opposite ani is, muna ang angle 115. That is why you have your cosine 15. So FR, using cosine law, you will get FR is equals to 213. And applying the sine law to get the direction of your FR, to get theta, 150 over theta, sine theta. So, sine theta is the angle, para diri, diba? This is B. Angle A, opposite of A. Angle C, opposite of C nga FR. And angle B, opposite of 150. That is why you will get 150 over sine theta is equal to FR over sine 115. So, theta, using your calculator, you will get theta is equals to 39.8 degrees. So, 39.8 degrees ni siya. Thus, if you will get the phi from the horizontal axis, if you will get this, you have to add this 15 degrees. Ngagikan siya dinhi sa atuang kani. So, from the horizontal axis, your FR, kani, your phi, from here to here, phi is equal to 38 or 39.8 plus 15 degrees. So, mo na ni siya ang imuhang direction sa FR. Any questions? Any questions? Wala?
Excuse
So,
me,
let's...
ma'am.
yes?
Anong, tanong lang ko if kanang sa 65 degree, ma'am, why 90 degree of minus of 25?
This one?
Kaya, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
90 minus 25 degrees?
Yes, ma'am.
25 degrees. It's a parallelogram, ang good. Wait ha. 90. Because sa
Kana siguro 10 o 15, ma'am.
dinhi na siya gikan sa kaning
Even.
right angle, di ba? Sa kanang
Ay, okay, ma'am. Oo.
x-axis and y-axis. So,
Yes, ma'am.
minus na to siya 15 and 25. 15 and 10. So,
The
sa
25. Okay, thank you, ma'am.
How about the others? Question pa. Let's proceed. Second example. Force vectors gihapon ta under our second topic. So resolve the horizontal 600-pound force into components. So before we are given the component and we have to get the resultant force Fr. Now, the resultant force Fr is given and you are tasked to find the components of the Fr. Okay? So get your notebook, pen, and calculator and solve this one. Minom sa kong tubig, class.